I'm Aaron Viles. I'm the campaign director with the Gulf Restoration Network. We're a 16-year-old nonprofit organization and environmental advocacy organization with an exclusive focus on the health of the Gulf of Mexico. So we've been a little bit busy the past 3 months, and we are committed to monitoring and watchdogging what is happening in the Gulf of Mexico and advocating for a better response. Because if you haven't been down there, let me tell you, it's been pathetic. We have exposed deepwater drilling as a high-wire act without a net. Oil companies like BP had no plans in place to respond to their worst-case scenario. And now the Gulf of Mexico is paying the ecological price, and communities along the Gulf Coast are paying a very significant economic price to this as well. The Gulf's a funny place. If you're from the other coasts, you might not understand it. The oil industry and the fishing industry coexist side by side. You couldn't slip a piece of paper between them. Families work for the oil industry in the off-shrimp years. They work for the shrimp industry in the off-oil years. And both of those industries have kind of boom and bust cycles. And unfortunately right now we got a big bust. We have a huge explosion, and the economic impacts are dire, certainly. And I think we all hold some responsibility here. While BP is the ultimate responsible party, and they're the ones who cut the corners, all the oil industry were out there cutting corners. They were all pushing the envelope. There was a mark of hubris about everything that was going on out there, and the Minerals Management Service, the agency charged with actually watchdogging the oil industry offshore, was not up to the task. They were figuratively and literally sleeping with the oil industry. And our watchdogs were lapdogs. And we are now seeing what happens when the idea of self-regulation moves forward. So I'm glad to be a part of this demonstration and this rally, and thankful to Move On and Greenpeace and all the great groups that put it together. But the reality of it is we work to make sure that we learn lessons from the Gulf Coast, and that all the other coasts that consider opening up their shores to oil drilling, and that as we look to make the regulators more accountable, and as we look to get climate change legislation that actually can reduce our dependence on oil, it's critical that we remain committed to the Gulf. The Gulf has been sacrificed for oil for 50 years. I don't know if folks know this, but Louisiana's coastal marsh, which is the most extensive in the continental United States, is losing a football field of coastal wetlands every 45 minutes. It's turning to open water. And that's happening for two reasons, one of which is the levees and the jetties that have been constructed on the Mississippi River. And that was done, certainly, yeah, to keep my house uptown from flooding, but it was also done to make sure the Mississippi River was a dependable shipping port for the rest of the country. Why do you think we have the nation's breadbasket in a number of landlocked states? It's because the Mississippi River connects those farms to ports. So there's a huge economic benefit for the nation. And then the second reason we're losing that marsh is because of the oil industry. They've dredged tens of thousands of miles of canals, pipeline canals, exploration canals, through that marsh, just slicing and dicing that coast. And we have a huge, huge crisis down there that BP's oil is really just underscoring right now. So we've got a huge crisis. We need the nation's commitment to making sure that that ecosystem is made whole, and that the communities have the resources to fight for their future. I hope you all work with me in the coming years and possibly decade to make sure that happens, and that we do not abandon the Gulf Coast when CNN wraps up their tripods and moves on, and BP starts bringing out the lawyers to fight back on this. So thank you so much for coming out.